Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for the latest episode of Missions Talk. Again, I am Mike Falkenstine with 1-8 Catalyst here in South Metro Denver, here in Colorado, and I'm here again with my co-host Steve Schirmer in Spartanburg, South Carolina. And Steve, as we get kind of through the winter, how are things? You've actually guys have had some snow there in South Carolina, haven't you?
Yeah, so as of the recording of this, I know you guys just had a nice snowfall.
Yeah, we
Uh,
did.
the white fluffy stuff. My family in Texas is covered in ice at the moment. They're in the middle of that. Well, they just, I guess, finished the actual storm part, but now it's just freezing, so it's not melting at this point. And my parents'
Okay.
yard was just full of sleet, mostly nice covered, but
Mm,
mostly all sleet and freezing
okay.
rain. But we had snow 3 weeks ago. We had a nice 6 inches at my house, which was
Mm,
nice.
that is.
And but now it's just all the rain that just came through today was the rain that gave you the snowfall and iced up Texas.
Mm.
Thankfully, it
Oh,
was
okay. A
just
big storm.
rain for us. But yeah, yeah,
Okay.
it's still cold though.
Well, it's funny, Steve, as you were talking, I was thinking, I'd much rather have, I think we ended up with, 8 to 10 inches of snow altogether. I'd rather have that than what they're having like in Dallas area, that ice because,
I
I mean,
agree.
just
I
flat
agree.
out, you can't really drive on ice. I mean, it doesn't matter if you've got four-wheel drive, all-wheel drive, it doesn't matter. It slides, right? So, in some
Yeah,
ways
I
that's
think.
kind of worse in terms of the day-to-day getting around and all that because as I told you, around here they've kind of made an art and a science of snow removal, so our roads are fine, and they
Yeah,
get
we
dry
have no
really
art or
fast. And
science about it here.
oh, there's not a lot of
It's
pre-planning.
called. Yeah, definitely on like my street. There's no snow plows coming in, and of course the house we
Oh,
moved
okay.
into 3 years ago, it's got this long driveway, and so trying to shovel that, I just gave up. I'm just shoveling a path for the tires, and that's it.
Oh, okay. Just to be able to get through. That's
Yeah,
funny.
that's all.
Well, Steve, yeah, on this episode, we've been talking about kind of the continued effects of COVID on the different areas of missions, and the episode we just did last time about the impact of COVID on cross-cultural workers. If you're watching this and you did not see that episode, I'd highly recommend it. I think it turned out well, and just some prayer requests for those that are serving overseas. And so now, Steve, we turn our attention to organizations who are sending people back and forth from their home country to a quote unquote missions field or from the area where they're doing their ministry.
Mm.
And so, I'm one of those, running one of those organizations here at 1-8 Catalyst. We in fact exist to create resources and deliver training, and we're doing that both domestically and a lot overseas. And so and then I've got a lot of friends that do this same thing. And so it's interesting, Steve, because some of us have made a whole ministry and a whole career out of, we're not cross-cultural workers in the traditional sense of we don't, I'm not living in Kenya or Brazil or Indonesia or one of these places where I go. I'm actually living here in Colorado, and then I get on a plane and I go for a week or
Mm-hmm.
two, uh, do that part of the ministry, come back. And so maybe the place to start with this, Steve, would simply be before we get into some of the implications of organizations that are resource providers as it relates to the effects of COVID. I know you and I both can kind of talk about international travel because the very reason that some of us have been able to make a ministry of this is that it has, before March of 2020, it was just extremely easy
Hmm.
and relatively cost effective
Mm-hmm.
to get on a plane, go to a place overseas, be there for 7, 10, 12, 14 days, come back. And that has all changed, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think what you said, cost effective. Where I go
Mm-hmm.
to now in the Middle East, flights are twice what were
Mm.
pre-COVID.
Mm.
They dip a little bit, but they don't even get close to what they used to be. So you've got restrictions, you've got things that we'll discuss in our short term because they kind of go hand in hand. But
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of things that hinder people like you who are out creating the
Mm-hmm.
resources that you do, like the books you have, getting them translated, getting over there, teaching
Mm-hmm.
them. Because, I mean, you were just in Kenya teaching them. Was it Kenya
That's
or
right.
Nigeria? Okay,
Yeah, it was.
Kenya.
It was Kenya.
Okay.
That's right.
Yeah, so you were just in Kenya teaching, but it's more than just creating the resource. And it's you just don't want to hand it to someone and say, okay, here you go, now go teach it because I can't get over there. The desire is I'm creating these resources. I'm going to go over there. Some places you're going to translate, some places are not. And you're going to teach them. You're going to teach leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And that is easier done in person than over Zoom. I
It
mean,
really
we
is.
all know that Zoom is great to an extent and it's useful
It
and
is.
needed, but it's limited. And you can only do so much training on Zoom before people start tuning you out. Yeah, there's just something about face to
That's right.
face.
That's right. That's right. And that's right. So you've hit a couple of themes, Steve. Of course, the story that I'm sharing now is about just kind of the accessibility of these kind of flights. I mean, they're actually still available, and so that has actually improved a little over the last let's call it year. Where actually a lot of the airlines at one point had just temporarily canceled a lot of their routes. I've got one I like a lot that I take directly from Denver to Tokyo on United Airlines, and they just stopped doing that for a while. I think they've now resumed it, but
I think
so
it
at
got
one
delayed
point there
again.
was. Oh, did it? They did. So they have had sort of this issue. There is this issue of, are flights even available? Can I get there? Especially through the year of 2020 into early 2021, there was the issue of can I get there? But then now there's in some ways the issue of, okay, I can technically do it, but it's going to take longer. It's going to cost more. And the story that I've been sharing is, as I'm returning from Kenya, the Omicron really sort of, that's when it became a known thing. And it came initially apparently out of South Africa, 2 countries away from Kenya. So we land at the Frankfurt airport, and it was like, I mean, armed police meeting us at the end of the jet bridge, wanting to see all of our papers, and taking our temperature. And then short distance out into the airport, there was another station. They're checking all our papers, and then United Airlines had a terminal of their own, and they have their own station, and they're checking. So on 3 different occasions, they're checking our paperwork. And so I think, boy, I can't even imagine being unvaccinated, in this whole thing. I mean, technically you could probably travel with that, but that's a whole nother level that, maybe they pull you aside, which I saw them do with a couple of people. And so just the availability of, hassle-free travel has sort of gone away. So then that it does at least sort of make me think, I have to kind of go through in my process.
Hmm.
Is it really kind of worth it, knowing that it's just going to be a lot harder to get there and take a lot longer? So Steve, the other issue is, of course, there are some countries where you just can't even go. You can't get there, for what I do in our ministry, places like China, we've got some things happening there, and Indonesia. Actually, we have a book resource fully translated into Indonesia, and we've now paused the release of that book, mainly because those in Indonesia really would love for me to be there for the book launch. And yet for both of those places, unless you have a very special visa and a very special reason to go in the country, really that the one main reason is, yeah, I already live there. I already have a house there or a residence there. They're just not allowing
Mm-hmm.
people to go at all. And so the inaccessibility of some places is even an issue. And I know, Steve, you've even talked to me about, with India and some places, it's kind of touch and go in terms of whether or not you can actually even go there, isn't it?
For our roles and the jobs that we have, and we'll definitely get into a lot of that with the short-term conversation we have next. You
Mm-hmm.
can't go to Indonesia and take time for quarantine. I mean,
Mm-mm.
then you're really spending a lot of time there.
I mean,
And
it
so
would be like a month
yeah, so
that you're gone.
you become
Yeah.
limited. We are all limited at this moment of really where we can go for a visit. And
Mm-hmm.
places like that and places like in South Asia, their restrictions are in and out, just constantly. And it doesn't matter if you have a ticket, but something could happen. And, even I was supposed to be there recently and we were actually seeing the writing on the wall. So we pulled out and we
Mm.
made a good decision because then while they weren't completely shut down, there was a lot of curfews and stuff going on where I was going, which would have made anything I was trying to do there impossible or very
Oh, right.
difficult. So
Right.
it really would have just been a waste of resources to go at this moment. And we'll just plan for another date when it's, and really what that did for us is we're just said, um, and this isn't really had to do with a short-term mission team because I'm more flexible. I can, if I need to go somewhere tomorrow, I buy a ticket and go. I just told one of my leaders, said, okay, we're just going to have to wait till this wave passes. Things start to open up, hop on a plane and go. We don't have time to plan out a month, 2, 3 months in advance. We just have
Oh,
to
right.
do it in the moment because we don't know if the door is going to shut on us 3 months later. So,
Oh, right. Right. And so, Steve, that gets us to the, really the first of the 3 points that we thought to talk about, which, of course, number one is just the implications of, for ministries that are sending people overseas or that are, that are traveling overseas, and the implications for the, the church, quote unquote, on the ground in these places. And certainly, you've highlighted a major implication, which is simply the places that we have felt called to go, we may not be able to go, or it may just have to be a lot shorter runway, so to speak, right? I mean, for many people, I would think to say, okay, we can't go to this place now. When we can, it's going to be like a week or 2 week window of planning. Uh,
mm-hmm.
would just mean for some people, okay, I'm not comfortable with that, right? I mean, I think for people like you and I, we'd be fine. I always tell people I actually in my little backpack that I use as I even just am around town. My laptop backpack. I keep my passport in there, kind of thinking, hey, an international trip could just sort of spring up at any time. I need to be,
Yep.
and it's just the idea, hey, I'm ready to go. At any point, I'm, some pops up and it's 2 days and you're getting a great, price on a ticket. I'm ready to roll. But for some people, that they have a different equation there, don't they?
Yeah, and I think that brings up the financial implication. I think it definitely increased cost, increased expenses, just because you are doing it more of rather than planning several months in advance to where I used to do, and it helps save us some money. I may not be able to do that, and I just may have
Hmm.
to eat whatever the cost is and just accept
That's
the
right.
new financial reality. So but I think for some that might hurt them more than others, and it may prevent them from going. I mean,
Hmm.
our friend
That's
Brian
right.
Gandy's has been somewhere recently in Africa, and just because of everything going on, not their whole team was able to go, and then they had things they had to deal with, and then you also have gathering. The size of the gathering. Does it suddenly become illegal to have a big gathering come together to be trained, even in countries where it's free to
Right.
do training? There are just
Hmm.
a number of things we have to consider nowadays, or at least you and I do. I mean, that's kind of my job. It's the way I think. So I get to do all that
Yes.
stuff so other people don't have to. But
That's true. That's right.
it is the new reality, and like even for you, like you've already said, it's a book. The translated version of one of your books is being delayed, and and I'm sure they want you there. You've done some training, and I'm sure you need to do more.
Hmm.
And you know, it is what it is.
Yeah, that's right. And so you're right. And in that case, in the case of Indonesia, part of what is a little heartbreaking is this team of five Indonesians who translated the book. They've now become kind of a part of the
Hmm.
at least the book in Indonesia, right? I mean, they felt highly enough about it that they wanted it to be in their own language, and so for them, they think, oh, Mike, you come and there's gonna be a month tour. We're gonna go to a lot of places, and yeah, they're just really excited about it. And so for them also, right, they this delay is heartbreaking to them, because it's part of it's become a part of their ministry now, right? So Steve, I think we could probably sort of summarize the implications by just saying that, for those of us who are going overseas, who feel called to either provide resources or training or people. I mean, of course, people are a resource too, right? One of those implications are, we're going to have to be really patient, a little
Hmm.
bit more flexible, and just be willing to kind of roll with whatever these countries are kind of giving us. I mean, if they give us the opportunity to come, but there's some restrictions or there's some, and you still feel called to go, just know that, there's flexibility is going to be key going forward, isn't it?
Oh, I 100% agree. I like what you just said. Flexibility, and what was the other word you use? Um, Patience.
Yeah,
Patience and
patience.
flexibility.
That's right.
I mean, there's a conference I am planning to go to, and we were supposed to do it in Malta. And, but,
Mm,
this is different from a book resource, but it's a resource of bringing people together to discuss a
yeah,
certain type of ministry in a certain part of the world. But the
right.
protocols in Malta required vaccinate any visitors have to have vaccine. Period. But then
Mm.
they only accept vaccine certificates from certain countries, and so about
Oh,
half of
wow.
the attendees were getting vaccines from countries where their certificates weren't valid in the eyes of Malta. And so then they had
Okay.
to address, okay, do we do the conference? Do we do it virtual? Do we change locations? We had to get the maximum benefit of attendees. We have to move to a nearby country, which increased cost, which means we
Mm.
got to change date. It also creates more headache for the organizer because they have to, it's hard
Oh,
enough
I can't even
doing the
imagine. Yeah.
conference in a place like Malta, which is a lovely place to be. But then you have to change it to a place that is not as open and free politically toward
Oh, right.
Christians as Malta is. So you've got that component. And then you've got to change locations, you got to change times, you got to change hotels, you've got to find hotel. So, yeah, patience and flexibility by everyone and grace, because those who
Right.
organize these things, especially conferences, they need us to be patient with them and to be praying for them because they're dealing with the biggest headaches. I'm just dealing with changing a plane ticket. That's all I'm doing.
Right.
Maybe a
That's
little
right.
bit increased costs. I don't know yet. That's my only headache.
Oh, right.
But
That's
even while
right.
we're
And I like
there,
that,
I'm sure
Steve. This whole, yeah.
there's going to be a lot of issues pop up in the conference. It may not run as smooth as it would have run if it was still in Malta, where they're used to doing the
Hmm.
conferences. So there's going to be a lot of patience while we're there, just in the logistical side of it, from everyone, just to be patient with them. Because it's probably not going to be smooth. But in the end, it'll get done.
That's right. That's right. And I like what you said about, yeah, maybe extending a little bit more grace during this period. Hey, things are not going to be as smooth, but you know what? We're together. Everything's okay. We still get to talk. And so just giving, you know, everyone a higher level of grace,
Hmm.
is going to be super important. I know for me, I've learned over the years that, for me as a resource providing, ministry, there's all kinds of stuff that happens on the ground in these places that I know nothing about. Right. I mean, I learned that way back when we had a lot of work in China. And in some cases, when we were doing Bible distribution, for example, the local people, the local leaders were doing all kinds of smoothing over with the the mayor of that town and the leaders. And I didn't see any of that because I was just coming in. We'd do our event, we'd leave. But what it took to actually get that done, I've learned over the years is, was not easy to do. And
Hmm.
I think like in Kenya, where I just was, for them to have that many people in one place, I learned from the inviting pastor who invited me to come that, oh yeah, he was wining and dining local officials to, just to make that work. And so, if it doesn't look, and it was, and then in this case, the Kenya case, it was because of the COVID
Hmm.
protocols, right? So,
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, just a lot of grace, I think, is good. So Steve, in terms of can resource providing ministries find enough countries to go to accomplish their mission, obviously is a good one. I have a couple of examples. I mean, I'll tell you about, kind of what we're going through with our ministry, but there are some, like I have a local friend here in Denver, known him just forever. His name is Eric. He runs a ministry that provides training teams to train pastors in China. His father actually started the ministry. They've been doing it since the 1960s. He's, when people were first able to sort of begin to come back into, to China and, began working on it then. And he's now not able to do any of what he has been called to do. So they're actually talking about, okay, is there another shift that we can do? I think actually in his case, there really isn't a shift, because if you're focused in one country, you do this in one place, and that place is saying, no, you are not allowed to come here. There's just some really
Hmm.
hard decisions that have to be made, right? For
Hmm.
us, the way I've approached it is, hey, we're going to focus on the places we can go. Fortunately, God has given us opportunities in a number of different places. And so, yes, to Brazil and Kenya, um, and probably no right now to certainly China. That's going to be a long-term thing. In fact, I've been telling people, I have a 10-year multiple entry visa into China. I think it expires in 2025, and I kind of wonder if
Hmm.
I probably will not be using that visa again, right? I'm gonna have to reapply for something else. And for anyone watching that is dealing with this too, my perspective, and I hope it's helpful to you, is simply, hey, I'm going where God is allowing me to go. Again, none of this is catching him off guard. And so maybe even as a way to direct our organization and our overseas efforts, we're just trusting that God is opening the doors that he wants to open. The very minute he wants us to be able to go to Indonesia, we'll be able to go there. And so, Steve, what do you think about that? I mean, there are some countries that are not open, some that are open, and we can kind of use that as kind of, God giving us direction, don't you think?
Yeah, I think it goes back to your word flexibility. I think, regardless of the country, especially when we're in a country that's starting to close for ministries like this, like your friend, the struggles you're
Mm-hmm.
having specifically in getting into China, I think flexibility is key ultimately. Again,
Mm-hmm.
flexibility and patience, because God, as you said in our last, I think it was our last episode, God, none of this took God by surprise.
That's right.
And excuse the train. Why does the train always come at the right moment? Anyways, forgive the noise of the train. My offices are really close to a railway
A train tracks.
crossing, and yeah, it'll just be a few seconds, and then they'll move on. But anyways, you know, none of this took God by surprise, and so I know for some, and I've had friends where they ultimately decide to leave the field and not to go back to what they were doing. I think for some that'll happen. I think for the rest of us, if we for those who are in like the ministry you're in, or for any ministry, if we really believe God
Hmm.
has called us to this long term, then
Right.
and not just specifically to a country, maybe it was to a country for a certain period of time. There's going to be a lot of experiences that you and others like you have gained in all the work that you've done in a place like China or whatever country you spent the most time in, that you can carry it on
Hmm.
to the next one. I mean, I'm already seeing where God is
That's
using
right.
my experiences in China in the past to help brothers and sisters in other countries because they might not think in a certain way of how to do ministry that we were forced to think of in the environment of China.
Mm.
And their
Right.
environment is becoming increasingly closer to what China's is, more from a security standpoint. So I can help them assess of how to approach things and maybe how to adjust so they can remain effective and fruitful in their ministry. So I would hope that people wouldn't give up. Yeah, you may have to
That's
learn a
right.
new language, have to develop new partners, figure out new cultures that you're not familiar with. But I think, like
Hmm.
you've been able to do that well, I think others, I hope, will take on the same challenge and pursue it in the
Mm.
same way you have.
That's right. I know we need to be getting to the end of this episode, Steve, but I do, as you were talking, I was just thinking about, it's sort of like what happened with the former China Inland Mission,
Mm.
that later became OMF. And, of course, they started with by Hudson Taylor. They were the China Inland Mission. They were called to, have a missionary push into the inland provinces of China. And in 1949, when the communists took over, they just couldn't do that anymore. And so, I think they are another example of an organization that, I mean, you now see OMF missionaries in a
Mm.
lot of other places in China
Yep.
really thriving. Their headquarters are in Singapore, and, they're doing quite a fantastic work in places. And then later, China sort of re-entered, for them. But yeah, so being able to sort of be flexible, I think, is the key, right? So if there are other resource providing ministries that are watching as we end this episode, let me just encourage you as, hey, we're in this thing together. We're trying to figure it out. Obviously, if you want somebody just to talk through some of this,
Mm.
please get in touch with me, and I would love to help. And, we kind of help each other, in fact. And because, I do think that's part of it, right? We kind of, here's what I've learned and here's what you've learned and whatnot. And so be flexible, continue to trust that God is in control in all of this. And yeah, I mean, it's gonna not be easy for a time. We can also be praying that, we do get to an end of COVID,
Mm.
and that, because I've thought the end was coming some time ago, several times. And so, so Steve, as we end the episode, any final words for those that are providing resources in an overseas context?
I would just say for those that are struggling, trying to figure out where they're going or they're hitting too many barriers where they've been accustomed to being, the resources are still needed, so
Hmm.
don't give up. Just keep pursuing. I would encourage you to get a hold of Mike, consider the way he's gone of
Mm.
where can he go, answering that question, and consider going in those directions for the time being. Maybe the
Mm.
obstacles you're facing are just the fuel God's using to help you look elsewhere. Don't assume that just because you're facing the obstacles or the doors closing where you're comfortable, that it's time to pack it all up and come home. For
Mm-hmm.
many of you, it's really not. I don't believe that it is. I
Mm,
really believe it's just an adjustment needs to be made. A shift will
that's
take
right.
place, and you'll be able to bless other places, other countries, other peoples, churches, and other regions of the world who need just as much assistance and resources as where you're currently located or where you've been located.
Mm, that's right. Thanks for that, Steve. So hopefully that's an encouragement. For those of you that are watching and are not involved in a ministry like that, please be praying for ministries that are providing resources overseas. There is just as Steve said, there's a continued ministry need. One of the things I talk about a lot in my ministry is that I go to places overseas and find that the national church in these places in these countries are, to their own admission, a mile wide and an inch deep. So evangelists have done a pretty good job in a lot of these places, but then that building depth and building, the training and training their pastors and is just a tremendous need that certainly the church in the West can continue to provide. So
Mm.
continue to be praying. And for those, again, that are doing that work, we'll be praying for you as well. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. I hope this episode was helpful. If it is, be sure to share it with friends. We've got this several platforms now. We're on YouTube and Facebook. Feel free to share this content. We'd love to have your participation in that as well. And so for now, thank you again for watching, and we look forward to having you with us on the next episode of Missions Talk.